play it all or nothing. Yeah, need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating, it won't be the last. Grind all the muscle, pull up. Poker right on the grass. We coming in, take over everything, run it up. Nothing holding me back. 3 in the wood.
Anyway, so after talking about how dangerous football is, we're now going to break down a football game and talk about the national championship. And this isn't just with professionals. This is with 18 to 22-year-olds. So first of all, Cam said it couldn't happen. He said that it was going to get run by 50, and TCU put 50 on Big Blue themselves, and UGA put 42 on Ohio State. Georgia and TCU playing for the national championship this Monday. Cam, let's break it down. What are we looking at? Who do you got? Just start the discussion.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and start early and say no one was playing defense on New Year's Eve. Nobody wanted to play defense. Nobody wanted to do anything on New Year's Eve. Nobody wanted to play any type of defense. One thing I will say, TCU really came out with the physicality that I didn't think they had. They really took it to Michigan from the first quarter all the way through the fourth. And I don't think Michigan was anticipating that at all. And they definitely took that game by storm. Georgia was a bit interesting, too, with the Ohio State game. I mean, it probably was the best weekend of college football that I've seen in a minute, especially during the – I think you had texted that in the group chat. It's probably the best playoffs that we've probably ever seen in the semifinals. But going on to the Georgia and TCU game, I gotta roll with the dogs here. I know that Georgia's defense was just torn to shreds by C.J. Stroud, but here's the thing about Kirby Smart. You looked at what happened after they got embarrassed by Bryce Young in the SEC Championship last year when Bama put up 45 versus them. The next two games, that defense allowed 11 points to Michigan and 18 to Alabama. So there'll be some type of huge adjustment that this Georgia defense makes where it's gonna force Max Duggan to make some uncomfortable throws. He won't be as comfortable as he was in that Michigan game, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to allow over 350 yards, and it won't be as crazy as what CJ Stroud did because they're a different team. They have the identity in Georgia. We know they're a defensive team. They're going to come out with a different plan. They're going to come out with a different scheme. As far as Stetson Bennett, I've heard a lot of Georgia fans talking crazy about Stetson Bennett. They don't like him. He did all his bad. Stetson Bennett threw for 398 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't know what more they want from Stetson Bennett. And I don't see how TCU matches up with Brock Bowers, who's the best tight end in college football. And you have Arian Smith, who was an absolute speedster on the outside for Georgia. And as far as Max Duggan's performance last weekend versus Michigan, he was okay, but he's going to have to play at a way higher level to beat Georgia, in my opinion. He threw 2 touchdowns, but also threw 2 interceptions and threw for under 50%. What really brought TCU into that winning state in that game was the run game. They were able to run all over Michigan. No team really runs all over Georgia at all. Like, this is the basis of it. You just don't run versus Georgia. You look at Ohio State. I think their leading rusher had 46 yards, and C.J. Stroud was the leading rusher below that. You don't really run versus them. You're gonna have to beat them through the air. Have they been suspect in the secondary? Yeah, you can say that. You can say they've been a little suspect, but I think they'll be able to get to Max Duggan because that's the type of defense they are. And I think that Stetson Bennett has a good game as well, playing situational football. He doesn't have to be a hero, and I think Georgia wins this game. But I will say, I think Quentin Johnson from TCU will have an impact in this game, and I think Georgia better be prepared to stop that. But I'm going Georgia.
Before I get into breaking down the game, I'm going to make it very simple. First of all, we had the right 4 teams. You know, we can have an argument over if Bama should have been there or not, yada, yada, yada. The fact of the matter is, if we really do believe Bama should have been there, that tells me we actually, for the first time in the history of the playoff, had more than 4 playoff caliber teams, which is fantastic. So, of course, we're going to go to 12 teams and start letting anybody in. It's also time for me to play a little devil's advocate because everybody's picking UGA. Everybody picked Michigan. Right. So why don't we break down how TCU actually does win this game if they can?
Genius, Josh, tell them the truth. Tell them the truth.
Hey,
tell them the truth.
I think that there is a very legitimate chance because, again, everybody wrote them off against Michigan, and they put 51 on their heads. So let's talk about how they can. So first of all, beating Michigan when your Heisman finalist quarterback, your Heisman runner-up quarterback, has below 50% completion percentage, beating them while doing that is very impressive. And if Max Duggan can play even a modicum better against UGA, that game gets close. The other thing that we don't even talk about is that TCU ran all over Michigan with their backup running back for most of the game, right? Kendry Miller was a 1,300-yard rusher, almost had 1,400 yards on the year. He went down relatively early with an ankle injury. Backup Emery DeMercado was the one running, and Emery DeMercado was running all over him. And now, was it him? I would say partially. The other part of it is TCU's offensive line for the smaller level schools, the ones that are always the Cinderellas. TCU has the biggest, most talented offensive line that we've seen. The biggest reason that Cincinnati last year got ran through by Alabama was because their offensive line was just too small. They didn't get the push up front that they needed. TCU doesn't have a guy on their offensive line below 300 pounds. They've got one of the best draft eligible guards on their offensive line. I'm trying to find his name. I wrote it down here somewhere. Steve Avila. They also have center Alan Ali, who is also considered an NFL prospect, and everybody else on there is either a redshirt junior or a redshirt senior. So they've got veteran leadership and some high-level NFL prospects on that line, especially in the right spot where you have a guard and center. You can put them on Jalen Carter and feel relatively comfortable. You can't really feel comfortable with Jalen Carter, but you feel more comfortable. Like you said, they've got probably one of the best wide receivers in college football in Quentin Johnston. He's about to be a top 10 pick. And then the other big thing, don't forget the defense now. Let's not forget the defense. They gave up 45, but they made splash plays all over the field. Dylan Horton had 4 sacks against Michigan. Michigan had the best offensive line in the entire college football atmosphere, in stratosphere this past season. Not to mention, TCU also had 13 tackles for loss. So TCU makes splash plays. Not to mention, they had 2 pick sixes.
Can I question that? All right.
Go ahead.
But Josh, when you saw that Philly special on the 1-yard line, it wasn't supposed to happen. Michigan was doing real suspect things in that game. Not taking away from TCU, but Michigan was acting real suspect inside the 5. I don't think Georgia's going to do those suspect things.
That's what I mean. They forced a fumble on the goal line. They had the 2 pick sixes. They were doing what they needed to do to make plays. And they still gave up 45, which isn't great. But still, they were able to make as many plays as they could. D. Winters, as a linebacker, he had double-digit tackles for loss this season. He had a few picks. He had the pick 6 against Michigan. So he kind of does a little bit of everything. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, let's not ignore him. He won the Jim Thorpe Award. They give that to the best defensive back in college football. So that kid can play. Not to mention, Bud Clark had 5 interceptions on the year. So TCU, they're trying to make them sound like there's this tiny school with like very little talent. They've got here on the hopes and dreams of unicorns. TCU has talent up and down the field. And I think that there's a shot. The best way for them to win is Max Duggan has an insane game. Because the one weakness of UGA is I don't think they have a corner that can cover Quentin Johnston.
They ain't got no.
I don't think that they really have a great secondary. I think it's hidden a lot by the fact they have a great pass rush. So if Max Duggan can stay clean and find Quentin Johnston can easily have 200 yards. Kelly Ringo is not going to guard him, respectfully. And we'll see. I think that
last week. He was getting torched by Marvin Harrison Jr.
Exactly. Exactly. And Quentin Johnston's bigger. So the TCU's defense versus UGA's offense is going to be really where this game is decided. Because TCU, like I said, they have Dylan Horton, they have D. Winters, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, Bud Clark. They've got some players, but so does Georgia. So it's going to come down to the trenches, as most football games do. And we're just going to have to see. We're going to have to see. I think TCU's got a shot.
The spread, I think, right now is 12.5. I think
I'll take the under.
I think that's a bit accurate, but we'll see.
Considering that Ohio State got ran off the field at Ohio State by Michigan and TCU just beat Michigan, I'll take the under on that. Chief.
It's tough. I think it's gonna be a good game. As my Alabama heart says, I love when sad Georgia people are sad. Like I love it. All Georgia fans are sad. If TCU wins, I'm not gonna have this. I'm not gonna be mad about it. I really won't. Personally, I just think Georgia's gonna win. But if TCU wins, I'll enjoy the tears. I'll enjoy the puppy barks. I'll enjoy all of it. Personally, for me.
My 2 favorite teams are Georgia Tech and whoever's playing Georgia. So, hey, listen, the head says UGA. They're loaded with 5 stars. They've got a whole lot of talent, and they've got one of the best coaches alive. But TCU's got a pretty good coach over there too.
They do. And I think it'll be an interesting game. It'll be an interesting game that night.
This could be one of the better national championships we see, potentially.
Definitely. A lot of them were blowouts.
Exactly. But so were a lot of the semifinals. And so finally we got 2 shootouts as opposed to Oklahoma not playing defense and then Alabama blowing somebody out. We actually got to see 2 good, well-played games.
Right. But that's going to wrap up our episode, guys. Josh, you have anything to say?
No, man. Hypnotoad, believe in it.
All right.
It's coming.
It's coming. It's coming.
Coming.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you tune in for all the New Year things we got going on. And Takeover out.
We play it all in night. Yeah, need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating, it won't be the last. Grind all the muscle, pull up. Parker right on the grass. We coming in, take over everything, run it up. Not that holding me back. 3 in the wood, rushing. I don't like Dutch, don't even matter, you know I'm facing. When I roll a paper, I like to go double. Run up a check, flip a W, make it an M. I need